The Galactic Federation's victory was supposed to be absolute. Their fleet hovered above the smoking remnants of Earth cities, a shimmering constellation of cold, metallic authority. Soldiers in sleek exosuits patrolled the scorched ruins below, their faceless helmets reflecting the destruction they had wrought. Commanders reviewed the operation logs from their orbiting warships, ticking off each objective as complete. Humanity was defeated, or so they thought. In the center of what was once New York City, General Cormac of the Federation stood on a makeshift platform, addressing his troops. The alien general's voice boomed across the silent streets, his words translated into a clipped, monotone English by the AI embedded in his command suit. Today, we have extinguished the final embers of resistance. The species known as humanity has fallen, their pride broken. They will serve, as all others before them have served. A cheer rose from the ranks of soldiers below. A figure knelt in the rubble not far from the general's platform, his wrists bound with Federation restraint bands. His head hung low, obscured by a mop of dark hair, streaked with dirt and blood. The insignia on his tattered uniform marked him as a Navy SEAL, though the Federation troops milling about seemed to pay him little attention. To them, he was just another relic of a lost cause, another defeated human who had dared to resist their inevitable dominion. The soldier raised his head slightly, eyes narrowing as he scanned his captors. His name was Ethan Cole, and while the Federation celebrated its victory, he was calculating. The weight of his restraints was familiar, almost comforting. They had underestimated him, just as he'd hoped they would. Human persistence is admirable, General Cormac said, his voice tinged with condescension. But it was futile from the start. Your weapons are primitive, your strategies archaic. Your planet will now be repurposed for the Federation's needs. You should take solace in contributing to something greater. Ethan smirked, a small, almost imperceptible movement that escaped the notice of the alien soldiers around him. They thought the fight was over. They were wrong. A young Federation officer approached General Cormac, saluting crisply. Sir, the last of the resistance fighters have been rounded up. No signs of additional threats. Shall we proceed with orbital cleansing protocols? Cormac nodded, his expression impassive. Begin preparations. This planet is no longer of strategic importance. The officer hesitated. There's one anomaly, sir. A coded transmission detected in the southern hemisphere. It's faint, likely just a residual signal from their outdated systems. The general dismissed him with a wave of his clawed hand. Irrelevant. Humanity's infrastructure is in shambles. There's nothing they could possibly. An explosion erupted on the far side of the ruins, interrupting him mid-sentence. Federation troops scrambled for cover as a plume of fire and debris shot into the sky. The general turned sharply, his eyes narrowing as his command AI began parsing the details. What is this? One of the soldiers approached, speaking quickly. Localized detonation, likely residual explosives left by the humans. No significant damage to our forces. Significant enough, Cormac snapped. These incidents should not occur. Tighten the perimeter and sweep the area. No loose ends. Ethan allowed himself a faint smile. The incident was no accident. It was a signal, a message to those who were still out there, waiting for the right moment. The SEAL's hands twitched subtly, testing the restraints. They were strong, but not unbreakable. He had trained for situations like this. The Federation might have brought advanced technology, but they lacked the one thing humanity excelled at: unpredictability. As the Federation troops spread out to investigate, Ethan's mind wandered briefly to the months leading up to this moment. The initial invasion had been swift and brutal. Earth's defenses, for all their preparation, had crumbled under the weight of the Federation's superior firepower. Cities fell one by one, and humanity had been driven underground, its remnants scattered like ash in the wind. But there was one lesson Ethan had learned early in his career. Defeat wasn't always what it seemed. When faced with insurmountable odds, humans didn't surrender. They adapted. And this time, they had adapted in ways the Federation couldn't anticipate. A soldier stepped closer, his weapon trained lazily on Ethan as if daring him to try something. The SEAL looked up, meeting the soldier's gaze, or what he assumed was his gaze, hidden behind that featureless helmet. "You look proud of yourself," Ethan said, his voice hoarse but steady. The soldier tilted his head, the AI translator clicking softly before responding in a mechanical voice. "You are defeated. Pride is irrelevant. Function is all that matters." "Defeated," Ethan repeated, his smirk widening. "That's cute." Before the soldier could respond, another explosion rocked the area, this one closer. Panic rippled through the Federation ranks as their comm channels buzzed with overlapping reports. Something was happening, something they hadn't planned for. General Cormac barked orders, his composure fraying. "Status report. What is causing these disruptions?" Ethan tilted his head, watching the chaos unfold. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. "Rule number 1. Never assume the fight is over until it is." The general's sharp hearing caught the words. He turned his gaze to the human prisoner, his expression darkening. "What did you say?" Ethan leaned back, his smirk full of defiance. "You heard me. But hey, don't take my word for it. You're about to find out." Cormac motioned for a soldier to silence him, but another explosion erupted, this time near the command platform itself. Federation forces scrambled as the ground beneath them trembled. Ethan used the momentary distraction to shift his weight and test the restraints again. This time, they gave slightly, just enough to confirm what he already knew. Freedom was within reach. The general's voice rose above the chaos. "Find the source. Eliminate any remaining resistance immediately." Ethan chuckled softly. They still didn't get it. This wasn't resistance. This was the beginning of something much bigger. As the Federation forces scrambled to regain control, Ethan prepared himself. The real fight was just starting. The air was electric with tension aboard the Federation's flagship, Invictus. The ship's corridors, once pristine and gleaming, were now alive with hurried footsteps and clipped orders. Monitors flickered with warnings that the ship's AI could not explain, subtle malfunctions cascading through critical systems. General Cormac stalked the command deck, his usual calm eroding as he barked commands. "This disruption is unacceptable," he growled, his voice like the scrape of steel on stone. His command AI, an advanced construct designed to predict and neutralize threats, responded in its steady, monotone voice. Analyzing. Initial patterns suggest a series of coordinated disruptions within Federation-controlled territories on Earth and in orbit. Sources remain undetermined. Cormac slammed a clawed fist onto the command console, the display flaring under the force. Undetermined? Impossible. No species we've conquered has ever demonstrated the ability to fight back once subdued. This is a human anomaly. The AI hesitated before responding. Human tactics deviate significantly from projected parameters. Their actions lack centralized logic, but exhibit adaptability. It is unprecedented. The general's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Spare me your analysis. Just find the source." Unseen by the general, Ethan Cole had been observing the escalating chaos from the shadows. The SEAL had slipped aboard Invictus during the confusion following the earlier explosions on the surface. His movements were a practiced ballet of silence and precision, honed through years of covert operations. The Federation soldiers, for all their technological superiority, had grown complacent in their perceived dominance. Their systems, while advanced, weren't designed to counter the unpredictable nature of human ingenuity. Ethan paused in a maintenance shaft, recalibrating a handheld device cobbled together from scavenged Federation tech. A faint glow emanated from its interface as he tapped into the ship's communication grid. The faint, distorted voice of a human operative crackled through the static. "This is Resistance Node 7. Disruptions initiated as planned. Awaiting further instructions." Ethan's lips curved into a grim smile. Humanity wasn't as scattered as the Federation believed. Months of planning had culminated in this moment. A coordinated, decentralized network of survivors and operatives launching strikes designed to exploit the very overconfidence that the Federation wore like armor. Each act of sabotage was a piece of a larger puzzle, a deliberate misstep to lead the Federation into a trap they wouldn't see coming until it was too late. He responded in a low whisper, his voice steady and commanding. Node 7. Maintain Phase 2. Do not engage directly unless compromised. Remember Rule 1. Copy that, came the reply before the line went dead. Rule 1. It was more than a mantra. It was a survival principle etched into Ethan's bones. He had learned it in the grueling crucible of SEAL training, where failure wasn't an option. Never assume the fight is over. The Federation had forgotten this rule the moment they declared humanity defeated. And now, Ethan would remind them in a way they'd never forget. He moved deeper into the ship, planting devices along critical infrastructure points. Power relays, oxygen scrubbers, and data hubs. Each device was a ticking time bomb of chaos, designed to wreak havoc on the Federation's meticulously ordered systems. The key wasn't brute force, it was precision, exploiting their reliance on perfection. As he worked, memories surfaced, unbidden but vivid. The invasion had begun with a dazzling display of technological superiority. Humanity's defenses, even its most advanced military technologies, had been brushed aside like cobwebs. But it wasn't the destruction of Earth's cities or the annihilation of its armies that stayed with him. It was the quiet moments, the desperation in people's eyes, the sobs of families torn apart. It was the weight of knowing that survival wasn't guaranteed. Yet in that despair, Ethan had seen something else resolve. He'd watched as people adapted, finding ways to fight back with whatever they had left. Farmers repurposing tools into weapons. Engineers turning scrap into functioning technology. Soldiers refusing to give up, even when retreat seemed the only option. Humanity wasn't just resilient, it was relentless. The Federation had underestimated that, just as they underestimated him now. He finished setting the final device, the soft click of its activation like a gunshot in the silence. His route took him toward the Invictus' central control hub, where he knew the ship's AI core was housed. If he could infiltrate that system, even momentarily, he could plant the final piece of his plan. Meanwhile, back on the command deck, Cormac was growing increasingly agitated. Reports of additional disruptions filtered in, each more alarming than the last. Entire sections of the fleet were experiencing power fluctuations, while others reported strange signals overriding their communication networks. The general's patience was wearing thin. Explain these anomalies, he demanded, turning to the AI. The construct hesitated. The disruptions suggest human interference. However, the methodology is inconsistent with previous engagements. They're leveraging nonlinear tactics. Cormac's claws flexed in frustration. Nonlinear tactics? Are you suggesting they're improvising their way to success? Affirmative. Probability of coordinated resistance now exceeds 52%. Adjusting strategies accordingly. Do it quickly, the general snapped, or we'll all be answering to the high command. Deep within the ship, Ethan reached the AI core. The room pulsed with an eerie light, the Federation's neural systems glowing like veins of molten metal. He approached a console, extracting a small drive from a hidden compartment in his suit. The drive contained a program designed by Earth's best hackers, simple, brutal, and effective. It wouldn't destroy the AI outright, but it would create enough chaos to tip the scales. As he inserted the drive, the core's glow flickered, a ripple of confusion spreading through the ship. The system's voice resonated through the chamber. Unauthorized access detected. Security protocols engaged. Ethan worked quickly, his fingers flying across the alien interface. You've got all this advanced tech, he muttered, and you still can't stop a little creativity. Alarms blared, and the door to the core chamber slid open. Federation soldiers poured in, weapons raised. Ethan didn't flinch. He hit the final command, activating the program, before turning to face his attackers. They fired, but Ethan was already moving, a blur of motion. He dove behind a console, drawing a concealed blade from his boot. He hadn't brought a gun. Too loud, too cumbersome, but in close quarters, silence and speed were deadlier than any firearm. The fight was over in seconds. Ethan stood amidst the fallen soldiers, his chest heaving, but his mind clear. The program was running, and the Invictus was now a ticking time bomb of its own. As he slipped out of the chamber and back into the labyrinth of the ship, Ethan allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. The Federation's arrogance had always been their greatest weakness, and today, they'd learned the price of forgetting Rule 1. Far above Earth, amidst the stars, the Invictus trembled. The Invictus was coming apart at the seams. Its once unshakable aura of dominance now flickered with every alarm, every cascade of errors rolling through the ship's systems. Lights dimmed and surged erratically as power conduits overloaded. Communications between Federation vessels were disrupted. Their encrypted channels swarmed with indecipherable noise. General Cormac stood at the heart of the chaos, his talons gripping the edge of the command console, as though sheer force of will could stabilize the unraveling situation. "Restore order," he roared, his voice slicing through the din of panicked officers and sputtering machinery. "I want these disruptions eliminated now." The AI's voice responded, measured but strained. "Critical failures detected in primary and auxiliary systems. Origin traced to AI core. Sabotage is confirmed." "Sabotage," Cormac spat, his mandibles flaring in fury. "A single human cannot." He froze mid-sentence as a realization struck him. The human. The one they had dismissed as a captive, a relic. The one who had smiled in defiance while the world crumbled around him. "Where is the prisoner?" Cormac demanded, swiveling toward his second-in-command. The officer hesitated, then paled as he checked his report. "Unaccounted for, sir." His restraint signal was deactivated during the earlier chaos. The general's claws raked across the console, leaving deep gouges. "He's on this ship," he hissed. "And if he's responsible for this, I will see him dead." Meanwhile, Ethan Cole moved with relentless precision through the crumbling corridors of the Invictus. The ship groaned under the strain of its cascading malfunctions, its once impenetrable systems now turning against themselves. Ethan's sabotage had been surgical, each step designed not to destroy outright, but to erode the Federation's control piece by piece. He wasn't interested in a Pyrrhic victory. He wanted to dismantle their empire, starting here. The SEAL approached an airlock, pausing to check the readouts on his handheld device. The ship's power grid was nearing critical overload, just as planned. He tapped into the comms, his voice calm and resolute despite the chaos. "Node 7, this is Cole. Phase 2 complete. Proceed with final maneuvers." A reply crackled through. "Understood, Commander. Fleet disruptions are escalating. Resistance forces are ready." He closed the channel, his focus narrowing on the task ahead. The next step required precision timing. He activated his suit's stealth mode, the adaptive camouflage shimmering as it cloaked him in the dim light. Slipping into the airlock, he began rigging the final set of charges, his movements swift and deliberate. The Federation thought of humanity as primitive, but this technology, crafted from the wreckage of their own ships, was a testament to what desperation and ingenuity could achieve. Above him, a rumble signaled the approach of Federation soldiers. Their footfalls echoed through the corridor, their harsh, guttural language punctuated by the clink of weapons. Ethan finished placing the last charge and pressed himself against the wall, his breathing steady, his hand resting on the blade at his side. The squad entered, their weapons sweeping the room in perfect formation. They hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Ethan to act. He moved like a shadow, the blade flashing once, twice, before the soldiers even registered his presence. The last of them fell with a strangled gasp, and Ethan stepped over the bodies without a backward glance. There was no room for hesitation, no time for second thoughts. As he made his way toward the bridge, the ship's AI issued an emergency broadcast. "Warning, reactor instability detected. All personnel advised to evacuate immediately." The announcement sent waves of panic rippling through the Federation crew. Officers scrambled to maintain control, their discipline cracking under the weight of their unraveling reality. Cormac watched the chaos unfold, his fury simmering beneath a mask of icy determination. He activated a comm channel, addressing the ship's security forces. "Find the human. Find him, and end this." Ethan reached the bridge's outer access point, pausing as he assessed the situation. Beyond the sealed doors, The heart of the Federation's command structure buzzed with activity. General Cormac loomed at the center, his towering frame radiating menace. The SEAL knew this confrontation was inevitable, and it was the linchpin of his plan. Taking a steadying breath, he prepared himself. The doors slid open, and Ethan stepped onto the bridge, his presence an affront to everything the Federation stood for. The officers turned in unison, their shock palpable. Cormac's eyes locked onto Ethan, and the general's mandibles flared in a predatory grin. "So," Cormac said, his voice low and venomous, "the pest reveals himself. Do you think you've won, human?" Ethan met his gaze without flinching. "I don't think. I know." Cormac moved with startling speed, closing the distance between them in a blur of motion. Ethan sidestepped the first strike, his movements fluid and precise, but the general's sheer size and strength were overwhelming. Claws raked across the console as Ethan ducked, sparks flying as the ship shuddered beneath them. "You're nothing," Cormac snarled, his attacks relentless. A dying species clinging to scraps of hope. Ethan didn't reply. He was focused, his training taking over as he maneuvered through the confined space, each movement calculated to exploit the general's overconfidence. The fight was brutal, a clash of finesse against raw power, and for a moment, it seemed the general's strength might prevail. But then Ethan saw his opening. A quick feint drew Cormac off balance, and Ethan surged forward, driving his blade into a vulnerable seam in the general's armor. Cormac roared in pain, staggering back as the SEAL withdrew the weapon, bloodied but unyielding. Ethan's voice was calm, almost quiet. "Rule 1. Never assume the fight is over." He activated the final charge remotely, the ship lurching violently as the reactor destabilized completely. Cormac collapsed to his knees, his glare searing with hatred. "You think this will stop us? You are ants beneath our feet." Ethan stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Maybe, but even ants can bite." He turned and sprinted toward the emergency escape pods, his path clear as the Federation crew abandoned their posts in panic. The ship's system spiraled into chaos, flames licking at the edges of the corridor as explosions rippled through the Invictus. Ethan reached the pod, sealing himself inside just as the reactor detonated. The pod ejected into the void, its trajectory carrying him toward the distant silhouette of a human resistance ship. Behind him, the Invictus erupted in a brilliant fireball, its destruction marking a turning point in a war that was far from over. As the pod's guidance system aligned with the resistance vessel, Ethan allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. The fight wasn't finished. Far from it. But today, humanity had reminded the Federation of something they'd forgotten. Victory wasn't about strength or technology. It was about resolve. And humanity had plenty to spare.